Alright, welcome back everyone, welcome back. So today we'll be sharing 5 essential tips for you, especially if you are a beginner in programming. So if you like what we are doing here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. And let's jump right away to the 5 essential tips, right? And make sure you watch till the end because we'll have a bonus 6 tip for you. Let's go. So the first tip, which I feel is the most important, is code snippets, right? So depending on what code editor you are using, it might be named differently. Okay, but essentially you will want to leverage or make full use of code snippets as much as possible. So essentially code snippets are a way for you to quickly generate code blocks, right? Depending on how you define them, right? So for example, instead of writing a new function like what we are doing right now, right? Do something. So that took around maybe close to 10 seconds. So instead of writing that all from scratch, okay, you can make full use of code snippets. So for us, we are using VS Code, and okay, I've already set up a code snippet to create a new function, and the shortcut to trigger it is RNF, tab new function, and that's it. Yeah. So that took around what, 3 seconds at most? Yeah. So you might think that this doesn't do much because, okay, so what? That was only a difference of, say, a few seconds, right? So imagine if you have to do this 100 times. Yeah, so that translates to a lot of time that you can save, right? Not to mention that if you have defined a huge code snippet, you can do something like this. So for example, I do use React in my professional career. So I do save a lot of time by doing something like this. Bam. And we have just defined a new component just like that, right? And that was what, within 10 seconds? Yeah. So in the long run, make full use of code snippets. Okay, I will put the link in the description box below on how to set this up, especially for VS Code, or in the pinned comments below. Alright, and the second essential tip relates to writing comments. Okay, I do know that some of us are guilty of not doing this consistently. Okay, but let me assure you that this will save your ass down the road, right? Especially if you are revisiting code that you have written maybe many months ago. So for example, right now we have a function here that is called cfuncd equals to d, which is a number, f, which is another number, and here we say d times f, and then we return the result. Okay, so without this line of comment, do you even know what this is for, right? So just imagine if we remove this line, what do you think now? Yeah, so make sure you write comments that are meaningful as well. All right, and moving on to the next essential tip, which is actually related to the previous tip. It's all about naming conventions, all right? Well, in terms of naming conventions, it can be quite subjective, but in general, do write names, or rather do use naming, or rather good naming sense for your variables or even function names. So for example, we have the same function here from the previous tip. So instead of saying cfuncd, we can say cost per year, right? Instead of saying d, we can say cost per month, f it could be number of months. Yeah. So this is much more meaningful. Yeah. Final cost, right? Instead of F final, it's final cost, right? It means something, and you can tell what is it trying to calculate just by reading the name, right? So make sure you use meaningful naming conventions for your code. All right, and moving on, the next tip is quite important from my perspective, right? Especially if you want to be as efficient as possible. So over here we have, say, a cost of a book, which is a number. Right now is 10, and we have a number of books, which is a number as well, which is right now is 20, and we are calculating the total cost by multiplying the cost of book by the number of books. Okay, so it seems quite straightforward here. Okay, but what happens if we have to change the cost of the book? Okay, and do a new calculation. So we say something like cost of book equals to 20, and then we'll have to calculate the new cost if we want to keep our previous calculation, maybe for history or audit purposes, right? So we will have to do this, right, to calculate the new cost again. Okay, so what happens if we have to do the same thing again if maybe due to inflation and the cost per book has increased to say $30? Okay, we will need to do this again. Okay, so you can already imagine where this is going. So imagine if we have to do this multiple times. This is just not very efficient. All right, so instead of doing all this, okay, we're going to remove all of the code here, and we'll say, let's not repeat yourself. So instead of that, okay, we can create a function that we can call, right? So get total cost, remember a meaningful name. Okay, we can first pass in the cost of the book. It should be a number. Okay, do not worry about the syntax because syntax is something you can pick up regardless of what you're using, JavaScript, Rust, C#, whatever. It is the logical thinking that is important, right? So, okay, number of books, number. Okay, and we can say total cost equals to cost of book, multiply that by the number of books, and we can return the total cost. And now we can just remove all of this. All right. And so if we want to calculate, say, the cost of book is $10 and we have 20 books, we can do this. Now, if we want to increase the price of the book to say $20, we can just do this as well, right? So you can see how this is much more efficient in the longer run or term, yeah? And moving on to our next tip. This is also something that I feel will help improve your skills as a developer or programmer, right? Which is to always revisit your old or code that you have previously written. Right, so something that I always try to go by is the saying, right? Knowing what we know today, how can we do better? Right, so going back to our previous function that we have created, so you can see that we have created this function called get total cost, which calculates the cost of books by the number of books. Okay, but we can improve this function by saying, okay, we do not need this line. Okay, we do not even need this. Okay, we can just return the calculation immediately, right? So this might seem like a slight or minor improvement, right? But you can already imagine better or bigger code blocks that you can work on or improve on, especially if you're trying to not repeat yourself. And for those of you who have managed to watch till the end, here is the final bonus tip for you, which is always focus on an objective, right? If you want to learn and become better at developing or coding or programming, right, always focus on an objective to help you learn better, right? Instead of trying to learn a specific programming topic. So, for example, say you want to learn how to do or perform calculations, okay, but you have no idea how you want to go about doing it. How about switching up your perspective and say, hey, maybe I should create a calculator. Okay, so that is your objective, for example. So, in order to achieve that objective, you need a step by step list. For example, you should start with a layout. Okay, and in the layout, maybe you need a display at the top to show the numbers. Okay, and buttons at the bottom that can be pressed on. And the buttons should do something when pressed on. So you might have already noticed that just by defining an objective or goal, okay, you can already derive the next few steps that you should most likely follow in order to reach your objective. And not to mention that as you follow the steps, you will be able to learn the topics that you were trying to do so in the beginning. Alright, so hopefully this short video on 5 essential tips that you can use in 2022 and maybe even 2023 has been helpful. And as always, stay awesome and stay safe, everyone. And we'll see you on the next video. Cheers, man.